It's 7:03. I'll open this meeting of the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission for Thursday, March 18th, 2021. Pursuant to Governor Charlie Baker's executive order dated March 12th of 2020. This is a virtual meeting. It's being recorded. Others are welcome to do so as well. I'll ask the clerk, Sheila Irvin, to read the roll.
All right, I will indeed do so. When I call your town, would you please give me your name and whether you're a delegate or an alternate? Adams? Is there anybody here from Adams? Okay. Alfred? Beckett? Cheshire?
Traub, delegate.
Thank you. Clarksburg? Dalton?
Zach McCain, delegate.
Thank you. Egremont? Florida? Great Barrington? Hancock? Hinsdale? Lanesboro? Lee?
Buck.
Oh, I'm sorry. Buck Donovan,
Buck
Lee,
Donovan.
delegate.
Okay, great. Lennox?
Hi, Pam Keever, alternate.
Thank you. Monterey? Mount Washington? New Ashford? New Marlboro? North Adams?
Hanlon, delegate.
Otis? Peru? Pittsfield? Irvin, delegate. Richmond?
Fred Schubert, alternate.
Thank you. Sandusfield? Savoy? Sheffield? Stockbridge?
Renee, is that Renee?
Is Renee there?
No.
Yes, she is.
Okay.
Well, she's.
Muted, I think.
I think they call it away from keyboard.
Okay.
All right. Stockbridge? Tyringham?
Hudson, alternate.
Thank you. Washington? West Stockbridge? Williamstown?
Bolton, alternate.
In Windsor.
David Zink, delegate.
Yep.
Sheila, Al Blake from Beckett joined late.
Okay.
Yes, Al Blake, alternate.
Thank you.
And it looks
Anyone
like
else that might
Doug
be
McNally
needed?
is here.
I'm sorry.
According to my screen, Doug McNally from Windsor is here, but he's muted.
Doug may be leaving.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
Okay, also in attendance is Tom Matusko, Laura Brennan, Kate Tapia, Emily Lang, Cleet Coos, Courtney Moore, and Marion Sneezek, all of BRPC. Did I catch everyone?
Yeah, Kyle, I would like to introduce Courtney.
Please.
So Courtney is the new senior environmental planner.
Hi, everybody. I'm just new to BRPC as of last week. I was previously doing river conservation at Housatonic Valley Association, so I'm familiar but new to the Berkshires and excited to work with you all in your communities.
Oh,
Well, welcome. It's nice to meet you. We have, you're fortunate to work with Melissa. She's very knowledgeable and helps us out a great deal. She's a real asset, and I'm sure if you're anything like her, you will be as well. Let's see. I'll look for a motion to open for discussion to approve the minutes of the January 21st, 2021 meeting.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Thank you for moving that, Buck. I didn't catch the second.
Fred, did you second that?
Sure, certainly. I second it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments, changes? Hearing none, I'll run a roll call vote for approval of the minutes. Peter Traub,
Yes.
Zach McCain,
Yes.
Buck Donovan,
Yes.
Pam Keeber,
Abstain.
Hanlon, yes. Sheila Irvin,
Yes.
Fred Schubert,
Yes.
Renee Wood,
Yes.
Sarah Hudson,
Yes.
Roger Bolton,
Yes.
David Zink,
Aye.
and Al Blake.
Aye.
Thank you. It moves. It passes. Next, comments from the public. Anyone want to make any comments from the floor this evening? Hearing none. Alternate and delegate issues. Do any alternates or delegates have anything to bring before the full commission tonight? Excellent.
I have this is Al Blake. Can you hear me?
Yes, Al.
I have a potential issue. As you all know, the old GE grounds just got a grant for under $100,000 to remediate the property. And I wanted to raise a potential concern that there's potential PCB under that property, and whoever's going to remediate it needs to make sure that if there is PCB gets taken care of. I'm not sure if that falls under the planning commission, but I wanted to bring it to your attention.
Thank you. I'm sure there's lots of people watching it. Tom, would that, or Roger maybe, would that come under site remediation? Would that trigger something?
Yes. Yes, if it's a, excuse me, if it's an action that's reviewable under the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act, that is this, I think just the fact that it's going to be funded by a state grant automatically brings it under the MEPA process. Is that right, Tom?
So, well, there has to be thresholds, I think, right?
Well, I thought that something funded by the state would automatically be under, no?
No, I think it's the thresholds, and I don't know what the development proposal is there. I actually haven't studied it that well.
But rest assured, if it comes under MEPA, we will be there.
Thank you.
There was just an article in the Berkshire Eagle about this property, I believe. And I don't believe
Right, that's why I brought it up.
I don't believe I saw anything in there that said anything about testing for PCBs.
No, it didn't. That's why I was bringing it up. And I don't know if they've hired a contractor yet, but I just wanted to make sure that it gets looked at if there are PCBs, and it does come under MEPA.
Well, one would presume that that would be a starting point, is to test for PCBs.
You would hope so.
Well, I believe they will, Al. I mean, it's not a secret site at all. That's for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Any other topics to come from before the commission from delegate or alternates this evening? Hearing none, we'll move to the next item. You've got a summary of executive committee actions of the February 4th and, or excuse me, yeah, February 4th and March 4th meetings. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Is Senator Hines with us?
I do not see him. There's someone who joined by phone. Well, I'm not sure who that was. Is that you, Senator? 4664, last four numbers.
Well, we'll move along, and as soon as someone sees him enter the room, if they could bring him to my attention. We don't want to keep him waiting. His time is. We appreciate him giving us some time, so we want to get right on it when he gets here.
Yeah, I didn't hear that he was not going to attend, and I emailed him a reminder this afternoon. So
Okay. Then I guess we'll start the interim clean energy and climate plan for 2030. Is it Emily that's starting tonight, Tom? Is that?
Yeah, I'll be starting.
Okay. So I just want to let you know that once the senator comes
the
up.
senator just jumped in the room.
Oh, excellent. Even better.
His timing is impeccable.
Not that you're any less important, Emily, but we'll start with the senator. Welcome, Senator. Thank you for taking some time with us tonight.
He's still connecting. Yeah.
Okay. Welcome, Senator.
Hello.
There, you sound fine. Just before the meeting, somebody told me that there were 6,498 bills filed this year, and 82 of them were yours. Is that true?
That's true. I'm sorry. It's a little ridiculous, actually.
Well, I think it's good to know that this end of the state is bringing ideas down to Boston. So that's wonderful news.
It's a little painful.
Feel free not to cover all 82 tonight.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And one of the committees I chaired, the Revenue Committee, last year had over 500 bills sent to us directly. So we had to go one by one through those, obviously, and have hearings and do the research. So it makes for a lot of work.
Well, welcome. I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, good. Sorry, I just jumped right in. Did I miss anything? And should I just hop in on some of what we're working on and the like from a legislative or regional and budgetary perspective? I guess.
I'll ask Tom if he's got Tom Matusko if he's got anything to highlight. Otherwise, you're free to do what you want. Tom?
No, I think that's correct, Senator. I mean, just your priorities. What are you aiming to accomplish this legislative session, both legislatively and budgetarily, and then big picture, I guess, on what are some of the big key items facing the legislature this season. And I know I was in a meeting with you a little while ago, and you were talking about the interrelationship with the federal stimulus, how that might impact what we're doing. I think getting a lay of the land about how the legislature is working would be useful.
There really is a lot to talk about. I have to say, this is my first time using an orange halo light for all these Zoom calls that I've been doing, and I don't think I like it. It's not bright enough. So sorry if I'm kind of mixing into the background here. Not as much as Doug McNally, but or Al Blake, but it's mixing into the background here. Good to see everybody. It's kind of nice to check in, even if it's not sitting around the conference table as we have in the past. And we just hit the year mark of being in COVID, and I've been asked to do a lot of kind of thought pieces around what it's meant. I'm now chairing a second committee in the Senate. It's called Reimagining Massachusetts Post-COVID Resiliency. And so it's a real effort to try to take stock of what's changing and what have we learned through this past year, and what are the new tools we might want to put on the table. So as an opening kind of, parking lot issue, I'd love to hear from all of you, maybe not tonight, but at some point around, geez, you know what? We're seeing some big changes in our backyards, and here are the implications for state policy. One of the obvious ones that keeps coming up is, well, hey, if we're going to see a move towards remote work, then what does that mean for some of our commercial space? And should we provide tools that would allow, commercial real estate developers to shift into a bit of a hybrid in a place like here in Pittsfield, you can imagine just saying, oh, maybe it's not all going to be office space. Maybe we need some more housing put into that, and maybe more co-working, and several implications like that. I think it actually is also an opportunity for Berkshire County. I don't know if you saw that Moody's Analytics explicitly listed Pittsfield and Berkshire County as probably being one of the winners from COVID and the trend towards remote work. As long as we get our infrastructure right for transportation and digital access, we stand to be well placed for absorbing a lot of folks who are choosing not to either accept jobs that don't let them work remotely, or employers who are saying, hey, we like this remote posture thing. Just 2 weeks ago, the governor said 20,000 state jobs are going to be shifted to a hybrid remote work posture. So I think we employ something north of 40,000. So, a good percentage are going to be, you go into the office 2 or 3 times a week, and the rest of the time you're at home. And I think it obviously depends on which agency and which job in the agency you're in, but that could be a bellwether. And that's what we need to see. I don't think we'll know the answer yet, but maybe by the end of this calendar year, we'll have a better sense of, okay, a large number of employers are saying you can work remotely several days a week. And so then we might see the ripple effects on, okay, what does that mean for our transportation investments and housing investments and childcare needs and the like. So anyway, that's kind of a big broad brush opening kind of reflection. I think, as you might imagine, we're starting a new term, and which is why it's good to check in now. We're also starting the budget process for this year, which is a good time to check in. And you won't be surprised to hear that I have a similar set of buckets that we put a lot of our legislation in, those 80 bills, if you will. One is just what are the things that matter locally for the Berkshires in Western Mass, and typically for our small towns. I do a lot of work on Pittsfield as a gateway city, but for a second here, I'll focus on kind of the rural policy piece. And, we've again worked towards creating an Office of Rural Policy. We've again, tried to create an Office of Outdoor Recreation. We've again passed, and the governor vetoed, and a Rural Jobs Act, which would essentially incentivize private funds into small towns and supporting small businesses in exchange for getting a tax credit. And but the governor prefers, we had a long conversation with Secretary Keneally, the Economic Development and Housing Secretary, around, what's the disconnect? We have the Senate and the House agreed to this. And the answer was, we prefer, bricks and mortar, and not investing in bigger corporations that could then essentially, in this case, growth fund managers that would then direct up to $100 million into the smallest towns in Massachusetts. And they said they prefer, smaller attention. Maybe that's the wrong phrasing of it, but a more deliberate bricks and mortar approach. They did agree. I was able to expand a rural and small town development fund from 10 to 20 million in the economic development bond bill. So we have a few of those to hang our hat on, but it's been frustrating. It feels like we're still chipping around the corners when it comes to rural economic development. And given the point that I just made about an opportunity in front of us, you have to get your transportation right. You have to get your digital access right. And I almost feel like if the pandemic happened 2 years from now, we'd be even better placed to exploit this shift in work and the economy and commerce, because it will be the case that basically every town should have high-speed internet by the end of 2022, and some work with the flyer that we've been working with Tom on connecting New York City to Pittsfield should be up and running. I think this even makes it more important that the long-term vision of the flyer, which is daily year-round service, becomes even more important in a world of remote work where people are living in the Berkshires and wanting to connect a couple times a week. And then obviously West East Rail takes some more time. We've we just finalized the original kind of advisory committee work and feasibility study, which was focused on kind of the economic impact and the feasibility piece, towards now focusing on the need for engineering and design work and identifying where the money's going to come from. So this ties into maybe a later comment around the federal side. Some of the other successes, we did have a culvert study finalized. We compelled several agencies to work on that, DOT and others. And, that's part of our strategy to say we need a culvert fund in addition to a small bridges fund. And the Secretary for Energy and Environmental Affairs agreed, and so did others. And so we'll be working on that this term as well. It's a little kind of in the weeds, in the mud and whatnot, but something that's critical. We took a pretty good look, speaking of studies, at pilot, and working with the auditor. We tried to compel the study. She went ahead and did it. And so now we're filing a bill that essentially, again, puts in black and white that we've got a problem with our state reimbursement for state-owned land. And so we've been noticing not only does the line item not funded, right now it's our pilot in the budget line item is 30 million, 45 million is what we need to fully fund it. And so we said, okay, let's reform the formula and fully fund. So that's a bill we filed with the auditor. So we'll see if we can get traction on that. I've put a lot of attention on climate change this year, and saying, what is it that is our comparative advantage out here? And it's also a space that we haven't seen a lot of work in. We just literally today, maybe 2 hours ago, sent back to the governor our version of the climate bill that we passed. He vetoed a version at the end of last year, and then we immediately sent it back. He sent back amendments. We sent it back. We're doing a bit of a tug of war here. Sounds like he might sign this one. But even though we make a big leap forward in a bill like this, there are still sectors that need attention. And I'm thinking in particular transportation, which is 40% of our carbon emissions and not a big area of focus in this bill. We instead focus again on energy production and kind of buildings, efficiencies and the like. A lot of offshore wind commitment, big environmental justice pieces, and a whole range of other things I can get into if you want. But it feels like we need to do more in transportation. And then the other area where I've been raising the flag is carbon sequestration. So it's not only reducing our carbon emissions, it's also capturing the carbon and making people aware that we have natural solutions right here in central and western Mass, with some of the biggest concentrations of forest canopy in New England, which is always surprising to hear because of the extent to which Maine has logged kind of their western acreage and the like. But it's an important piece. So what we're saying is, hey, can we have a chapter 61 for ag and recreation? Can we add a piece to that says you as a private landowner can receive tax benefits if you put it into 61, I forget what letter we're on now, D or E for forest conservation, and also create a fund so that towns aren't paying the price for it. So that's another piece we're trying to work on, and really put forward a menu of options for that, and including I think working with the Woodlands Partnership on what is it that what are the wood products that would hold carbon and also contribute to the economic development piece. So there's a real important conversation to have there. Schools have been another focus of mine. We did the Student Opportunity Act, which is going to have a huge impact on Pittsfield schools, more than any, just about, well, certainly by a long shot, by an order of magnitude, more than any other school in the Berkshires. And the other attention, therefore, has been on what do we do for our rural school funding. We got the rural school line item up to $3 million this fiscal year. Some big winners, Central Berkshire will get, I think, close to 300 million, thousand. Jesus, wouldn't that be nice? 300,000 and a few other winners. But you know, we tried to make that a part of the Student Opportunity Act, and they said, no, you can't, because that's the result of a blue ribbon panel that really dug into the foundation budget. And so instead, they agreed to continue with the rural school aid line item for now, while we stand up a rural school commission. I keep saying rural, really we're switching to low and declining enrollment, because it's not always rural schools. There's some that in the Commonwealth that just have declining enrollment, and it applies to them. And so that I'm also the chair of. It's careful what you make noise about, because then you're told you gotta run with it. So I'm starting that up. We finished a school transportation commission. So I filed another bill kind of outlining those findings, essentially saying, you know, we only fund our school transportation at best 80% these days for regional schools. So saying, what do we do to make sure that the schools that need it are getting it? Because there are plenty of regional schools that are better off than others. Most of mine can use it more than, say, not to throw them under the bus, but I don't know, a Concord Carlisle or Lincoln Sudbury, and some of those that are doing just fine. And but we could really use more than that 80%. And also saying, look, there are district schools that are, you know, that municipal schools that could also use it, the school transportation reimbursement. And so what are we doing to look at that? And so this commission did just that and said we can apply a means test, we can do other things to find efficiencies, including how we you know, put forward our contracts, and a few other items that can help with our school budget on that front. I feel like I'm rambling right now, but I have a lot to talk about. Transportation is another space. Working with BRPC, you know, I really have appreciated that in terms of not only you know, the train piece, but also a range of other pieces with One Berkshire as well, for focusing on, you know, can we rethink rural transportation? So we got a couple of bond authorizations, one for on demand and helping the BRTA with that, and another for the Transportation Management Association that essentially says, you know, how do we better use our existing transportation assets moving around the county? So trying to explore that a little more. So maybe I'll stop there and make it more of a conversation. But those are some of the ideas that we've been trying to run with. As you can see, it's a lot built around just really tangible. What are you all seeing and hearing, and how do I grab it and do something about it in Boston? And trying to kind of shift some of those you know, policies that kind of have a big impact on our budgets around here, and the policies that will kind of strengthen us moving forward. So that's a quick summary.
I'll
Thank
stick
you.
my neck in and ask a question which will show my legion of ignorance. Where is in the school educational program does training for trade work, trade jobs, electricians, plumbers, etc., where does that stand from a legislative point of view?
It's a mixture of things, right? So we certainly have our McCanns and others and Taconics that are funded slightly separately. But we have, you know, honestly, this is why we keep saying we need more money, is that when schools are making a choice to reduce the amount we're spending on, or even the programs altogether, right, for having access to wood and home ec and auto and the rest, like these are music programs. I mean, it goes on and on. You know, those are the unfortunate decisions that I keep hearing about, and that are leading, honestly, students to rethink which schools they're going to. We hear that and see that pretty tangibly. So the short answer is those are often some of the programs being cut these days, and it also means we look at where do we have access to programs that where we don't right now. And Southern Berkshire, I'm thinking of, is kind of first on that list versus, we can have access to in Central and in Northern Berkshire, vocational education and technical education. Some in the eastern part, you see people going over to Northampton area. So it kind of depends on where you are and where you might get access. But it's an unfortunate shift from the 25 years since I've been in high school, or even more than that now, closer to 30, where we used to have a pretty robust set of programs, and now you just don't.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's after we listen to you and meet with you this evening, we're going to be reviewing our letter of comments on the interim clean energy and climate plan. And part of our comments are the fact that we have problems with enough tradespeople out in this end of the state to perform a lot of the things that the climate plan is calling for in terms of upgrading equipment in residences. And we're just.
I'm glad you're highlighting that, because the whole narrative around it is you can, and Biden does this at the federal level. I hear him doing it a lot. You can create jobs by investing in transitions in certain industries and outfitting buildings. And so why are we not also investing in that just as heavily? I think that's a great point to make.
Hey, Adam, this is Al. I totally agree with that, especially with retrofitting. Housing is a huge market, and we typically have to go outside of the Berkshires at least, if not further, to get people to do that work. But my other question is regarding high-speed internet. As you're aware, the rural towns are eventually going to get it within the next year, hopefully. But what about towns like Pittsfield that has the old version of medium speed internet? Don't they need a transition to a real high-speed internet, and how would they do that?
Yeah, so I was glad to be in Beckett. When was that?
Well, our part is still a year away, but phase one is one section that's finished.
Yeah, exactly. So I can't remember when it was, a couple of months ago, to announce at least the start of the first phase is out of 4, right? And so I often think of Beckett as saying, even the towns that are getting it, it's going to be another 18 months before it's finished. It's just, I can't believe we're still saying that. But at least it feels like now, for the most part, we have a solution for every town. I think so. Put this in the category of things that have been revealed by COVID as, the digital divide is not just a rural divide. And so to go through that process in the first weeks and months of COVID to say, hey, students, and Sheila can appreciate this. Hey, students in downtown Pittsfield, do you have the hardware and the software, and the access to the Wi-Fi to learn remotely? And the answer was, I forget what, was it over 1,200 students, maybe closer to 2,000, maybe 1,800, did not in downtown Pittsfield. And so it's a mixture of things, right? Just the economic status or other things where you may not have that tablet or laptop at home, or someone may not be paying for internet access, and so it's a real the digital divide is real, and it's not just in our smaller towns. And so given what I said about the shift of the future of work and how we want to prepare folks and the training needed and the access needed, it's been a real wake-up call. And so Tricia Farley-Bouvier and others have been, and myself and John Barrett have really been trying to grab money where we can for studies and for other approaches to saying, hey, it's our downtowns and our main streets in Great Barrington and elsewhere that also need it, run high-speed internet. And it's, so I don't think, this will certainly be one of the recommendations of the new committee that I'm starting, and we're not waiting 2 years, the length of the session, to make our recommendations. We're doing it in the short term, and making sure that there's a real investment in kind of the town and the future workforce that we're creating. Part of it is, if we see an acceleration of trends that were already happening, telemedicine being one. We took the step this year last year to really put telemedicine at parity in terms of reimbursement rates for in-office visits. Which is great in many respects. It also continues to show that, you need to have access at home typically to get it. It gives a lot of us access to specialists in any part of the state that we may not have normally had access to pretty regularly, which is a good thing. The health system agrees. The tricky part is we also see an acceleration in things like online shopping. What is the implication going to be for our main streets and our small businesses? And so part of it has been, and Tom, you've been great in this, you and Laura, and the technical assistance that businesses might need for preparing for participating and competing in that space, which is an interesting prospect. Anyway, continue to ramble, but it's relevant when you have groups like VidMob right here on North Street in Pittsfield that's kind of doing worldwide back office or what is it called? Anyway, videos for advertisements for companies. See, I just showed my limitation of technological knowledge, but they're doing the behind the scenes tech work from right here, and so they get access to high speed internet by paying a lot of money. It's kind of been their solution, but it's showing the need even right here. I successfully bored everybody, so that's good.
Senator, I wanted to thank you for your support again for the Office of Rural Policy. This is something that the Rural Policy Advisory Commission has been advocating for years now. Hopefully this is the year, or this is the session that goes forward. I also want to let you know that we have convened a working group related to the housing crisis in Berkshire County.
Right.
And I know we're going to try to circle in with you and the other legislators, but I was impressed at that working group with the magnitude of the problem from all different angles. And I noticed you've filed some legislation related to that.
Yeah, that's. I'm glad you're working on that. We had a great tour yesterday with Secretary Keneally, the Housing and Economic Development, down Tyler Street, and it's been a real eye opener for the demand, and we're really lucky to have Milltown Capital kind of injecting real capital and real strategy into what housing on the market rate side will look like. And I think what we're all keenly aware of is we also have problems in other parts of the county where, your firemen and policemen can't even afford a house in town. That's a problem. And so the affordable elements are a piece, and renewing the stock is another piece. And so it's a weird dynamic in the county right now with kind of the exodus, maybe of, out-of-staters. And it feels like you can't build houses fast enough in some parts, particularly in the South. And there's a demand. And I just shared an email with a realtor friend. I'm pulling it up as I speak. And the headline was something like, the fastest, here it is. Mass home sales hit a 17-year high.
Yeah.
It's just crazy in an economic downturn, supposedly, right? And so it's just, you see pieces of that out here, and not in every community, but it's an interesting mix that I don't think we fully understand right now. But anyway, it shows first the demand, I guess, and the need for supply, and yeah, we'll see.
But the median price was over what, 400,000?
Yeah, that was the other headline
across the state.
The price
That's median. So half of them are higher than that, and only half lower. 400,000.
Right. Exactly. So accessibility to that stock is a big question. Well, you have a lot of work. Maybe leave it there.
I'll leave my, how do you address, when I'm small town Richmond, in a number of areas, I'm sensitive to the not in my backyard syndrome. How for a small town with a particular tradition do you encourage the community to embrace, let me call it low-cost housing or affordable housing? This has been something that's just concerned me locally. I don't know if there's an answer. Any thoughts on that? How do we change the mindset?
Yeah, no, it's a great point, and it does come up invariably. I think it's, on the one hand, you're right. It's a messaging and getting rid of this sense that, who is going to be living there, and I think there's a sense that this narrative that I just gave, that we actually have a problem now of people can't even afford to live in their own town that they grew up in, right? So there's that piece. The more we recognize that that's a reality, it helps, I think, smooth that narrative. The fact that it's a mix is also one that I've seen, get traction. Look, the fact that you have market rate housing and you're, depending on where you are, you're grabbing, General Dynamics engineers and hospital employees and college employees or whatever it might be. And so there's a recognition that, yep, we can do both. And so I think it's I don't know. I think also that there's just practicalities around the dynamics and the trends that we've been facing in terms of population decline. And let's make sure that we have the ability to keep everybody here and attract people here. And so it just feels like it's all of the above. And it's a tough position to be in as an elected official, to be making the case that's against maybe the wills locally, but it's an easy one for me because when it's grounded in, who do we want to be as a community, and it's open and inclusive and accessible and helping every person amongst us is, that's an easy case to make from our hearts. So.
This is Doug McNally from Windsor. I have to say that, recently we've had 2 homes sold to people from New York and Boston, and 2 other homeowners who had second homes here who have decided to move here full time because their employers are going to allow them to continue to work remotely. Mm-hmm. And all 4 of them have become actively involved in community committees and commissions. So I'm seeing it as a very positive thing.
Oh, good. That's great to hear. Soon you won't have to wear 5 hats all the time, huh?
I'm already at 7, so I don't.
Yeah, 7, down from 9.
I was on another meeting tonight before I got on this one.
Adam, this is Al again. I think there's been some zoning changes that the governor's made to hopefully allow for potential multiple dwellings or low income housing. So hopefully that should help as well.
Yeah, and the percentage needed.
Right.
Yeah, so lowering it to a majority. We did that in the recently.
Senator, can you speak a little bit about the federal recovery money and how that's going to interplay with the budget process?
Yeah, so we're at an interesting position because, quite frankly, the revenues have been stronger than any of us anticipated, and so we are up already $800 million in this fiscal year over projected revenue. And so that's a statement I didn't think I would be able to make. And so what that means is, we're now in the process of building a budget. We anticipated something like $2 billion shortfall. And so, we were able to do all right last year in the current fiscal year because of a lot of one-time expenditures. We took from the rainy day fund about $1.5 billion. We did several one-time moves, and as a result, able to try to level fund as much as we could. And I think this year now we're going to received $4.5 billion from the federal for state assistance. And that gives us a pretty good problem to be in, which is how do you spend it without creating a structural deficit, right? We don't want to go so far that we create a program or add to a program and we can't actually match that next year or keep it going in a sustainable manner. So it's pointing to thinking through what are the, catching up on Student Opportunity Act is clearly one of them. We did a level fund with 107 million or 8, whatever it was, for inflation. So now we can, move forward with that commitment. So that's a good thing. And what are the other one-time expenditures that we want to make that'll pay dividends in the long run? And so, it might be certain infrastructure investments. It might be, we were thinking about things like pension, but there's that's not allowed. That was explicitly not allowed in the federal statute. But there's a lot of things that'll come onto my list. That's for darn sure. But I think that it's a real opportunity to make sure that not only the things that we're spending more on right now because of COVID, and that's a long list, that's a real list, but also what are the things that have been laid bare by COVID, right? We've seen disparate outcomes in terms of economic, who's impacted first and longest, health outcomes, especially by race, are very different. And so, there's a lot of work to do that's been exposed by that, by COVID, but it's, so I think we're going to be okay. You've seen, I think there's been a list going around, maybe you've shared it as well, Tom, the kind of municipal contributions that we can expect. And so there's a strong base for some communities to start with right off the bat.
Oh, I see that Pam has her hand raised.
Yeah.
Hi, Senator Hines. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Yeah.
I'm Pam Kieber from the Lennox Planning Board. And going back to housing for a second, you mentioned that Milltown Capital was assisting in some regard relative to what understanding how to manage or create more market rate housing. If I heard that right, I was hoping you could elaborate. We've pretty much heard that any new housing construction is at least $250 a square foot. It's probably gone up since we heard that, which in reality means the creation of new market rate housing is in line with prevailing wages, median wages, is virtually impossible. So I just wanted to know if they had any insights that you could share with us, or whether you have advice for us on how to broach that issue.
Yeah, so the Milltown is in a unique situation. I think it's probably safe to say that they're able to maybe take a smaller profit margin and have community interest as part of their mandate, essentially. And so it might be worth getting Tim Burke to come and talk with you all at some point. He's basically a manager of the fund, and so I'm hesitant to get into how they're making ends meet. I can speak to across the street from the latest Milltown developments on Tyler Street is Dave Carver and Morningstar, and we were very active in kind of stacking capital. And actually, I take that back. Milltown is working to use the HDIP, Housing Development Incentive Program, for gateway cities. So that doesn't apply to Lennox. That's for Pittsfield only. But it speaks to a strategy that we've used is you're putting your finger on it, right? So the cost of construction is the same as it is in Boston right now, and it's up here, but the rents we can't get the same as Boston, so our rents will here. And so how do you close that gap? And our strategy to date has been, HDIP with Morningstar. Trisha Fralibuvi and I literally used budget earmarks, local priorities, to help out with some of the bigger, some of the pieces. A roof here, and I can't remember what else we did. Maybe a drainage system there, and those types of things. Just because we felt like the value of that investment was important enough to make sure they could move forward. And the city kicked in with some, and so you can see it's rarely going to be the developer. I think Allegrone maybe has succeeded in doing it. They use historic tax credits, if I remember, for two of their downtown developments, the Howard Building and the Anota Building. And so it becomes some combination of all of those, right? Historic tax credits, which would be available, housing development if you're in Pittsfield, and maybe a few others that if the rest of River Plan is moving forward, you could have towns with some money to spend. I point to that because it's been old GE money that Pittsfield has often used to incentivize some of these developments. So it's tricky though, and you need the right developer who's maybe willing to see profit over the long term. So it's a tricky piece, and you seem to be aware of how difficult it is. Happy to talk more about specific developments, by the way, if you want to do that and see if there's some other pots of money we can think of and access.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. You've been very generous with your time tonight. Do you want to stick around and take a couple more questions, or you got a final statement you'd like to make?
Yeah, no, obviously you all know how to get a hold of me. If not, it should be easy enough to find, but adam.hines@masenate.gov. Happy to continue one-on-one if there are further questions. I know you have a big agenda, and I was only on it until 7:50, so I'm now 4 minutes over. So I'll let you do your work together. But it is good to see everyone, and maybe my closing remark is that it's been a heck of a year and horrible in so many respects. And at the same time, if we get a few things right, it feels like we're poised to come out pretty strong as well in certain industries and in certain long-term kind of modeling, right? And so, maybe we are turning around population decline. Maybe we are finding that more local residents can have access to more jobs if this culture of remote work continues. And so there's some silver linings there, and I hope that we can all kind of make sure that we maximize what those are. So looking forward to doing that with all of you.
Thank you. And thank you very much for your generosity with your time. We always love to see you. It's always great when you stop by. Tom, you want to add anything before?
No, I just want to say thanks, as you did. Appreciate your strong effort for Berkshire County.
And all of you as well. Appreciate your work.
Thank you, sir. Let's see. We'll go back to Emily Lang, Senior Planner for Environmental Issues, and we'll discuss the letter I alluded to earlier with the Senator, our comments on the interim clean energy and climate plan for 2030. Emily, I'm sorry, I had to interrupt you before.
Oh, no problem. Thanks. So hi, everyone. My name is Emily Lang. For those of you I haven't met, I'm a planner with BRPC in the Environmental and Energy Planning Department. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of the Massachusetts Interim Clean Energy and Climate Plan for 2030, which I'm going to refer to from here on out as either 2030 CECP or just the plan. And then Koos and I together will summarize the specific chapters and strategies proposed by the plan, as well as the main points of the comment letter that has been prepared by the Regional Issues Committee in response to the plan. So the 2030 CECP was released by the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs on December 30th, 2020. The public comment period opened in early January of 2021 and will close on March 22nd. The EEA held 2 public webinars on the interim 2030 CECP, one on March 9th and the other on March 15th, where the plan was summarized and participants were able to give oral feedback. And both the webinar recordings, slides, as well as the plan itself are available on the mass.gov website. The 2030 CECP outlines the actions that will be taken by the Commonwealth over the next decade to achieve 2030 emissions limits, which are 45% below the 1990 baseline levels. The EEA feels that this limit balances reduction goals with economic costs, taking advantage of turnover transition points for infrastructure throughout the decade and allows markets to scale and transition. The CECP was prepared in coordination with the Commonwealth 2050 decarbonization roadmap, so that the strategies, policies, and actions outlined in the plan put the Commonwealth on the right track to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. The 2030 CECP takes a 5-sector approach to greenhouse gas reductions, which are transportation, buildings, energy supply, other sources of emissions, which refer to the industrial and non-energy sector, and natural and working lands. So first, Cleet is going to get into some more detail on the strategies proposed by the plan for the transportation sector, and then I'm going to discuss the remaining strategies after that. So take it away, Cleet.
Thank you, Emily. The format of the plan includes sector strategies followed by supporting strategy actions. And within the transportation section, there are 6 strategies with each having 2 or more strategy actions. And in a moment, I'll walk you through and highlight the strategies and the related actions, as well as discuss some of our comments and concerns. But before I do that, I just wanted to provide some general comments. As it relates to transportation, the 2030 plan sets ambitious goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 45%. The majority of those emission reductions will come from electrifying light-duty vehicles. In other words, there's going to be a strong push to get people to purchase and utilize new electric vehicles. We believe that the plan should be more aggressive with respect to medium and heavy-duty vehicles as well as buses. The plan is based on the premise that the availability, both in terms of numbers and types of vehicles, will increase. And we also have concerns related to costs associated with the new vehicle technology. There's a high reliance in order for the goals to be met of the 45% reduction. That means that between 750,000 to 1 million new electric vehicles will need to enter into Massachusetts fleet within the next 10 years. I think that's quite ambitious. Also related to that, and as I'd mentioned, is the cost. I think everybody here is well aware of where Berkshire County stands in terms of personal income. And really the question exists is whether or not our residents are going to be able to afford the vehicles. One thing that is missing in the discussion on transportation is what impact is going to occur as a result of these costs in terms of goods and services. Those costs in all likelihood are going to be passed on to the consumer, and they're not going to be insignificant, but that element has not been addressed. One final general comment is that many of the transportation strategies are overarching, and there really needs to be more or better coordination amongst the state agencies. Those are the general comments. Next, I'm just going to briefly run through the 6 transportation strategies and highlight some of our comments and concerns. The first strategy is entitled focusing on cap transportation sector emissions, invest in clean transportation solutions. This particular strategy directly relates to the Transportation and Climate Initiative. And I'm sure most of you are aware of that. The strategy action includes signing on to the TCI program with the implementation in 2023, as well as development of low carbon fuel standards. The low carbon fuel standards are going to focus on the diesel components of our fleet. Related to that, a low carbon fuel is essentially a biodiesel fuel The implementation deadline that they're looking at is a ways out. We believe that that can be done in a much quicker time frame, and our comments reflect moving up the implementation of that. One other item that I need to point out is that, and I've alluded to it previously, we have developed comments on the Transportation Climate Initiative Program. We are attaching them to this comment letter because we want to take another opportunity to highlight disparate impacts that TCI has on rural areas, once again, to ensure that our concerns are being heard. The second strategy is focused on implementing coordinated advanced clean vehicle emissions and sales standards. And this essentially relates back to zero emission vehicle mandates. The strategies, as I indicated, are very ambitious. And we believe that more focus needs to go on to trucks and buses, and we identify that as one of our concerns in the comment letter. Strategy 3 is focused on reducing the upfront zero emission vehicle purchase cost burdens. Obviously, we believe that that is a good thing. Currently, the state has a program referred to as More EV, and it provides $2,500 rebate for the purchase or lease of battery electric vehicles or fuel cell vehicles, and $1,500 for plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. One of the concerns related to this is the long-term viability of the funding source. I do not see that the TCI program is going to be a viable source, nor is the Volkswagen settlement program. That program is really limited to, or only has $75 million at its disposal, and it's been utilized now for 2 or 3 years. So, it's of concern. There's another aspect related to a low and moderate income program. There isn't a lot of specificity about that in the plan, but we do believe that there is benefits that could be had for our residents. So we support that particular aspect. The fourth strategy focuses on deploying electric vehicle supply equipment and enable smart charging. I think sort of that title is self-explanatory. One thing that I need to point out that, the ideal timing of charging is going to be off-peak at times in the evening when vehicles are parked. Obviously, there is going to be a need for fast charging and for individuals that do not have the vehicle, the ability to charge their vehicles at their residence, such as apartments, etc. We identified that an absent from the strategy action is a requirement that utility providers play a more active role to promote and construct this equipment. We believe that they need to put more skin into the game. Strategy 5 is focused on engaging the consumer and facilitate markets. Strategy is intended to inform consumers and fleet owners about the benefits of electric vehicles and providing education and technical assistance. I think this is key to the success of this initiative, and gaining acceptance of these vehicles. Both EEA and Mass Clean Energy Center need to step up their efforts to assist in this education and outreach effort. Most recently, I've had conversations with Mass CEC, and it's encouraging. They're going to start looking to engage fleets here in the Berkshires, and we welcome, the opportunity to partner with them. One other item related to our comments in the strategy is that, National Grid and Eversource, should, continue to partner with the state agencies to further promote this. And the state's Clean Energy or Clean Cities Coalition really needs to get more involved in this effort, as their whole mission is focused on promoting clean alternative vehicle technology. And then finally, strategy 6 is stabilizing light duty VMT and promote alternative travel modes. This is really focused on getting a handle and reducing continued increases in vehicle miles traveled from light duty vehicles. And essentially that's associated with commuting. Time will tell how much reduction will come from, telecommuting and changes that will occur following the pandemic. I guess if there's one good thing, that possibly could be it. A lot of the strategies or actions, seem to be more related to rural areas and urban areas. When you talk about smart growth policies, here in the Berkshires, we're limited in terms of our access to transit. So alternative transportation modes are quite limited and probably isn't going to do much in rural areas. With that said, that concludes sort of my overview of our comments. If anybody has any comments, I can take them either now or following the presentation.
Hey, this is Renee.
Hi, Renee.
One of the things wonderful presentation, both you and Emily. One of the things I'm very concerned about is the commonality or a universal connect plug. Every vehicle seems to have its own idea. And of course, Tesla has kind of cornered quite a bit of this market. Is there anything in terms of what's come out about trying to get a universal charging unit or a universal connect point? Thank you.
Thanks for that question, Renee. And certainly is a valid thing. Tesla's like the odd person out. All of the other vehicle manufacturers have, jumped on board with one common connector for vehicle sales in the United States. Tesla remains on their own. There may be some sort of adapters that might be able to be utilized both ways between, the two plugs. I think really based on my experience, the only way that we're going to see one common plug is when the federal government will need to get involved and mandate that. And I base that on my experience dealing with newer vehicle technologies and the OBD2 onboard diagnostic connector that became commonplace for vehicle inspections in the early 1990s. There was a big problem to standardize that, and after a number of years of not being successful, the only reason it is the feds jumped in.
This is
Tom,
Doug.
I think we had Pam, then Roger.
Hi, Cleet. Do you know whether any consideration was given in the planning about retiring or doing buyback programs at the state level to take our fossil fuel burning cars out of the, overall fleet rather than when they're traded for EVs, rather than just having them exported to auction in other states or countries?
Thanks for that question. I am familiar with buyback programs. Unfortunately, the program design or the plan as it exists, there is no mention of that. That could, provide some additional benefit.
Roger.
Oh, yes, I have a quick question of fact. Clete, does the category light duty include pickup trucks? And if so, what's the size cutoff? Because those are really tremendously important, and especially in our region.
Yeah. Yes, the light duty limit would include the lower end half-ton pickup trucks. Anything above that would fall into medium duty.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah, let's go. We'll get to you, David. I think it went Doug, Al, and Jim, and then we'll go David. Doug?
Yeah, Sheila and I also serve on the BRTA board. And one of the problems that we're facing, you mentioned buses several times, and the runs in Berkshire County tend to be so long that electric vehicles are not practical. Is there investigation of either better battery lifetime for a bus, or such thing as hydrogen cell buses as an alternative for rural areas? And secondly, one of the things we're looking into as BRTA is shared ridership for kind of on-demand type stuff. And we're wondering how that fits in with this kind of plan.
Okay. Thanks for those questions, Doug. And I've been sort of following what's going on at the state level and, at BRTA with the various studies that have been occurring, on transitioning to electric buses. I think that, really on a daily basis, the technology is improving. A lot of that really is being driven on or by changes in the battery technology. Hopefully sooner than later, the technology improves that it can provide enough power to electric buses so that they may will meet your needs. One other option, though it might be a little bit more costly, is that having additional buses and swapping them out could be a solution. And then, as you alluded to, there are other cleaner technologies such as hydrogen fuel cells that could make up for or compensate for the lack of battery power and include that technology in BRTA's fleet. So I think that, and there are also, a number of routes in the Berkshires that one of the studies have identified that, would be able to acquire current technology electric buses and function in a satisfactory manner. And going on to the question related to, on-demand service, I believe that, those vehicles should incorporate zero emission vehicle technology. And I believe that, we're starting to see more of those vehicles come into the marketplace. And I'm relatively confident that, there should be vehicles currently available that would meet the need in the application.
Thank you. Next, Al, Jim, and then David Zink. I'll ask everyone to kind of move along a little bit to keep us a little bit on schedule. We still have to hear back from Emily again, and then we have to go to a motion. So
Yeah, Real
Al?
quick, I think you just answered the question. Are on-demand vehicles synonymous with driverless vehicles?
No, they are not.
Okay, then my question is, is there any mention of driverless vehicles? And if so, are they going to be required to be electric?
The plan currently doesn't talk about autonomous vehicles, but you know, as far as the plan is concerned, a vehicle is a vehicle. So, you know, if it's autonomous, it would have to be electric, and most of the technology is for autonomous vehicles is you know, that of battery electric.
Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan, also to keep in compliance with the state law, I just have to announce you're here as a voting member. So Mr. James Sullivan from the town of Hinsdale is with us. He joined a little
My
later.
apologies for being late.
No apologies needed. We're always glad to see you. Thank you for attending.
Clete, my question is this. What manufacturers are you looking at to be able to supply these electric vehicles just for the city of Pittsfield? Because obviously we're not the only city that's looking to do this in a 10-year or 15-year span. And the research that I've done on it is I don't see any manufacturer that is going to be able to meet the needs of an entire country in the next 10 years. So I'm wondering how you're going to overcome that hurdle. Are you going to buy different vehicles from different manufacturers? I mean, we can't afford the Jaguar. We certainly can't afford the BMW. You know, the closest one may be the Nissan. But again, you know, where are we going to get these vehicles?
Jim, I share your concern, and I didn't include that, you know, in my presentation. You're exactly right. I mean, last year, throughout the United States, only 375,000 electric vehicles were produced and put into use. That's not a very large number. You've got a lot of auto manufacturers, you know, that are committing, you know, to bring these vehicles into the fleet. One of them being GM, committing to bringing 30 new vehicle types into the fleet. I guess time will tell. And I agree. It's an ambitious schedule, and there's a high reliance, on these vehicles being available. And if it doesn't occur, then obviously the emission reduction targets won't be achieved.
Thank you.
We'll go to Mr. Zink, and then we'll go back to Emily.
I think you might have already answered the question I was going to ask, but it has to do with autonomous vehicles, and if your meetings, if you have any discussions of autonomous. But I think you replied that you don't talk about autonomous vehicles.
Right.
Supposedly, autonomous vehicles are the up and coming thing with electric vehicles.
That is correct, but the 2030 plan nor the 2050 plan speak to that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Emily, we'll let you lead us again.
Okay. So I'm going to run through the next 4 chapters, and I can pause after each chapter if there are any comments. So chapter 3 outlines strategies to decarbonize the building sector. Strategy B1 covers actions to take to ensure that new construction is 2050 compliant, which means that new construction or construction that is not reliant on fossil fuels for heating. Actions include high performance stretch energy code in 2021 that's going to become mandatory by 2028, as well as eliminating mass save incentives for fossil fuel equipment in new construction by 2022. Our comment letter states that we would like to see the 2030 CECP place greater emphasis on older homes rather than new construction. Berkshire County has a high percentage of aging housing stock, and there is generally less new construction taking place in our region compared with much of the state. So a stretch code would be less impactful here than it might be elsewhere. Strategy B2 details actions to achieve widespread building electrification and building envelope upgrades for 75% of existing building stock by 2050. This includes phasing out incentives for fossil fuel heating systems, new air and ground source heat pump incentives, and consideration of relevant training programs. In our letter, we note what we were discussing before, that our region is already suffering from a dearth of tradespeople, which creates barriers for all residents, and especially those that are low and moderate income, from accessing existing clean energy incentives. So we ask that the 2030 CECP include a review of regulatory barriers that have been put in place over time that have deterred people from entering the trades. We also ask that the plan includes mention of the Property Assessed Clean Energy Program, which is an existing program and should be promoted for commercial and industrial properties to increase clean energy adoption. Strategy B3 states that the administration will convene a commission and task force on clean energy and implement a declining emissions cap on heating fuels. Zero upfront capital solutions for low-income and affordable housing residents will be a consideration of the task force. Our comment letter acknowledges our support for zero upfront capital solutions, but asks that middle-income households be considered for these benefits as well, since upfront costs might prevent this population from adopting clean energy technologies. So I'll stop there. That's all of Chapter 3 and buildings. If there are any comments.
Any questions for Emily?
I have a question, Kyle.
Yes.
When you're talking about the construction or rehab of old buildings, I noticed that if we're going to go to a zero carbon emission to generate heat or generate electricity, I wonder if we're looking into something like a geothermal system where solar panels would power the heat pumps and you would generate the heat and cooling from a geothermal setup, 10 feet deep, coiled tubing. And is that something that they're considering, or are they just using this as a broad statement and having the contractors try to figure out how they're going to enact that?
It's mentioned in the plan as something that they want to implement on a wider scale, but they don't get into much detail past that. But it's like on the list with air source heat pumps and that kind of stuff. And they talk about training programs for contractors, but if there are no contractors, it's not really going to be enough.
Doug McNally?
Yeah, Windsor is a green community, and I can, if anyone wants to see the wounds shown, to try to fight the battle to convince people that air source heat pumps supported by solar is now a less expensive alternative than traditional oil heat or stuff. It's so the reason I raised that point is I think that one of the things that as a regional entity we might want to do is start pushing the real data, because we have a town office that now is heated by air source heat pumps by a solar array outside, and it's going to cost us long term much less than heating by oil. But there are a lot of naysayers in town because there's a little upfront cost that made it very hard to get this done. So I think that there's some public education needed to be done.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. There are also plans to increase incentives for both solar and, sorry, my dogs are barking, both solar and air source heat pumps, which will make them more attractive options than they are currently, which should be helpful as far as outreach and like widespread adoption goes.
What I'm saying is that electric heat got a really bad rap back in the late 70s when electricity was cheap and they encouraged people to go to electric heat, and it was baseboard resistant heat, and people put it in and then the rates skyrocketed. And there's a lot of people who still think that they don't understand air source or ground source. Ground source, of course, is a much more upfront cost, but air source heat pumps as a viable home option. So I just think we need some public education there.
Yeah, it's in the works, and the market's being driven right now by the rebate structure from the utilities. So a lot of people are working on spreading the word on that. I'm involved in the industry myself in a certain capacity, and it's underway. Any final questions on this chapter before we move to the next one?
Yeah, this is Al Blake again. Based on the last person's comment, I've had heat pump.
Oh, we lost you.
And it turns out they're more expensive than have the right parameters to put in solar. So I was wondering if community solar is in the mix anywhere, which I could avail myself of to offset that cost.
He broke up a little bit, Emily. I think the question was his electric bills were higher than he thought it was, and is community arrays in the works as part of this plan? Did I sum that up, Al?
You did.
I'm sorry, 1 second. I'm having an issue here. Sorry.
No worries, Emily.
Yeah, because I really think communities arrays, I mean, half of it, there's probably 75% of housing can't put solar on them for one reason or another. So I think community arrays is really the way to go.
Yeah. I think it may be part of the plan.
Yeah, I think so. I think community solar is they're trying to expand it and do a lot of outreach as an option for people who can't install on their own properties.
Okay. Any final questions about this chapter? We'll let Emily go with the next one. And Emily, don't worry about your dogs. We all have.
I think they're done. Sorry.
my little girl's been quiet tonight here, so we're good. Then we'll move into the next chapter.
Okay. So chapter 4 is called Transforming Our Energy Supply, and it includes strategies and policies for decarbonizing the Commonwealth's electricity generation and energy supply systems. Strategy E1 addresses actions to fully execute the Commonwealth's existing solar programs and ensure renewable energy procurements are completed on time. So we didn't have any comments for this strategy, so I'll just continue on to E2, which calls for interstate collaboration for regional electricity system planning. Again, no comments for this strategy, so on to E3, which includes methods to modify the Commonwealth's attribute markets so that they better correspond with one another and with the activity in regional markets. And we ask that DOER standardize the metrics and terminology used by the various attribute markets so that programs may be more easily comparable than they are right now. Strategy E4 describes methods that various state agencies will pursue to facilitate widespread solar deployment throughout the state. So in our comment letter, we recognize and support the need for rapid and widespread deployment of solar, as well as other clean energy resources over the next several decades. And we appreciate that the plan acknowledged that deploying the solar resources that will be necessary conflicts with important land use goals, like protecting critical habitats and ecosystems, and that the two endeavors have to be carefully coordinated. And we expressed our concerns that regions west of I-495, especially Berkshire County, will be disproportionately tapped for solar and storage siting compared to the rest of the state due to the greater availability of undeveloped and or less expensive land. And this is something that smart regulations currently incentivize utilities to site solar out in our region. And we go on to say that given our tourism-based economy, environmental constraints, and desire to maintain quality of life standards, we're concerned that this development will negatively impact the future of our region. And we ask that the environmental and economic benefits of our region's forests as important sources for carbon sequestration for the Commonwealth be recognized as well when siting solar across the state. We support and prioritize the built environment over natural landscapes for solar and storage, siting like parking lots and buildings. And we also think that regulatory control of the solar permitting process should be restored at the local level. We've seen the unintended consequences of Chapter 40A, which have forced some communities to restrict the development of solar as they've been left with little ability to weed out detrimental solar projects and no ability to incentivize beneficial ones. And our letter also states the need for more to be done to enable solar on both residential and commercial buildings, including incentives for barrier mitigation and structural repairs to make homes and other buildings solar ready. We've asked that EEA and DOER put pressure on utilities immediately to upgrade their infrastructure so they can affordably and practically manage the process of widespread electrification. And last but not least, in Chapter 4, we have Strategy E5, which establishes offshore wind as the most reliable and feasible path forward for development of the Commonwealth's wind industry. We support that the development of offshore as, and we believe it to be the best source for wind energy. And this aligns with our priority of preserving the natural and recreational resources of our region, our tourism-based economy, and quality of life for our residents. Any comments or questions?
I have a few, actually. I worked in the renewable energy industry for 16 years, put up solar panel arrays, and put up wind farms in Texas, all across the country. And two of the biggest problems with these two types of energy generation is the amount of output that you can get from a stanchion or a tower, and the inability to store the electricity. And with solar, the amount of panels that you have to put in to be able to make any kind of money on it or to be able to supply a grid is per square foot is just an absurd number. The acreage is insurmountable. It's practical for a homeowner. It may be practical for a small town, but to be able to generate that kind of power, to be able to supply a grid, it just takes a lot of land footprint, and the technology hasn't caught up with being able to make more electricity with less acreage. The problem with wind is also you don't have the ability to store the electricity. You either use it or you lose it. So why aren't we looking at things like hydro, where we can utilize the rivers that we have to generate electricity through hydro generation? And I know that everybody's afraid of this big word nuclear, but done properly, nuclear is about the most efficient and green way to produce electricity. We seem to be focused on these two ways of generating electricity in what we consider to be a green manner, but solar panels are good for about 20 years. There's only 3 places in the world that will take decommissioned panels because of all of the chemicals required to treat those panels to make them photogenic. Wind farms and the impellers and the resin required to make those impellers is as toxic as it comes, and they don't break down, and they don't last forever either. So I'm just wondering, you know, the discussions that we're having about green energy are not entirely honest. The energy that we generate may be green, but the ability to get there is a very dirty process. So I just don't know why we're not considering other alternatives to the green alternatives that they're not that green.
I'd like to say something, David Zink.
Hang on a second. Pam was up next, and we got to move along here, folks.
I want to respond to this man who was just speaking, and I want to say that nuclear power is by and far and large much more polluting than the blades on a windmill.
Thank you. Pam, you had a question?
Yes, it was about, and I'm happy for this to be answered perhaps in a subsequent BRPC meeting, but I caught this sentence that BRPC has observed unintended consequences of solar becoming a protected use under Chapter 40A. That sounds like agriculture and educational religious uses are protected uses. Perhaps we can talk about that in another meeting so we can understand it as municipalities.
I see Tom making notes, and I think we probably will.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Any final questions for this chapter?
Got one.
Yes, Buck.
Yeah, Emily, are they gonna continue the SREX program, or is that ending as planned? Do you know?
They don't really talk about it a lot. I would have to
Okay.
look back at it. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know. They do mention it. I can't exactly remember what they say about it.
That's a pretty major
SREX
incentive.
SRECs are already gone. The new solar thing is smart. The SRECs, you can't get SRECs any longer on any solar array.
No, but the existing, they're supposed to run out, and there was talk about extending it, the program.
Yeah, but they've pretty much said that the smart is going to supersede that.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no mention of extending.
Okay, the original.
Yeah.
Thank you. If you want to move ahead with your next segment, Emily.
Yep. So Chapter 5 is called Mitigating Other Sources of Emissions, and it outlines strategies for the industrial and non-energy sectors to reduce emissions. Strategy N1 outlines actions to reduce emissions of high GWP gases associated with uses that are expected to grow through the next decade, like HFCs used in refrigeration, air conditioners, and heat pumps, and SF6 used in gas-insulated electrical infrastructure switchgear. We had no comments on this section, so onto Strategy N2, which includes ways to implement best practices around waste, wastewater, and agricultural emissions. And this strategy presents a goal of 90% waste reduction by 2050, which was established by the 2030 Solid Waste Master Plan. And we appreciate the aggressive goal, but think that it is unrealistic without a major system overhaul to waste management as it stands in the Commonwealth. And we believe that further state intervention must be considered, like state-run facilities, which will shift reliance away from commercial waste management and the burden off of municipalities who don't have the capacity to address mounting waste management issues at the local level. So that's all we had for chapter 5. So, are there any comments?
Any questions on this? Hearing none. I think you're on to the last one, chapter 6.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So chapter 6 is called Protecting Our Natural and Working Lands. And we begin our feedback on this section with just a general comment. And we think it's critical that the state develop a comprehensive land use plan that involves all relevant state agencies instead of continuing to pursue strategies piecemeal. And without a coordinated approach, the efficacy of the strategies, not only in this chapter, but throughout this plan, will be stymied. And a comprehensive land use plan will better acknowledge the interconnectedness of our built and natural systems and all of the issues included in this plan, not just those related to our natural and working lands. So we think that needs to be developed as soon as possible. And strategy L1 outlines various initiatives intended to conserve farmland, forests, and wetlands, including the goals of no net loss of forests and farmlands by 2030. And this comes from the Resilient Lands Initiative. In our comment letter, we state that we appreciate the dedication to protecting our natural and working lands and quality of the environment as a way of increasing resiliency to climate change. We point out that current real estate development trends and market pressures are particularly concerning from a land conservation perspective. This goes back to what we were discussing earlier. Our region in particular has been experiencing heightened development pressure from both Boston and New York recently. And given these trends, as well as the severity of the climate emergency, we don't believe that the goal of achieving no net loss of farmland by 2030 is sufficient. And without a more active tracking mechanism, it may not be achievable at all. And to achieve no net loss or more aggressive forest and farmland conservation goals, this plan should develop tracking metrics to ensure that these goals can actually be met. And our comment letter doesn't address any of the subsequent strategies in this chapter. So I'll just finish up by quickly summarizing them. So strategy L2 includes actions to implement best practices to improve diversity and ecosystem health on natural and working lands. Strategy L3 states that the EEA will explore opportunities to incentivize the regional use of harvested woods on long-lived products. And strategy L4 outlines actions to develop the ability to track and verify carbon sequestration and storage. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions for this chapter or any other ones?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't find my chat button, all that, my hand button all that fast.
Your actual hand works just as well, Roger.
I think in fairness, excuse me, we have to return to Jim Sullivan's point about nuclear power. And I would just like to say that quite independent of what any of us feel about the merits of nuclear power, from a political point of view, it is just never going to happen that a governor and general court in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts are going to plump for nuclear power. And so I think probably the reason the administration is not discussing these options is that politically it's a non-starter. And I say this is quite independent of how any of us actually feel as individuals. It's a political fact of life.
Thank you. Any final questions or comments? Hearing none, would anyone care to make a motion to approve the letter of comments?
So moved.
Thank you. Can I get a
Second.
second?
Seconded.
Thank you. Did you catch that, Marianne? Or is it Kate? I'll run the roll. Any further comments?
Yeah, I
before
didn't catch that second, Kyle. Sorry.
Jim was in. There was one voice, and I saw Jim Sullivan seconded as well. So we'll go with Jim.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Any final questions or comments before we run the roll call vote? Hearing none. Peter Traub.
Yes.
Zach McCain.
Yes.
Buck Donovan.
Buck.
Give us a thumbs up,
Yes.
Buck. There he is.
Yes.
Thank you.
I did.
Pam Keeber.
And can I say that was an incredibly impressive letter and research and work. Well done.
I agree with you. Thank you for mentioning that. I should have said that myself. Kyle Hanlon, yes. Sheila Irvin.
Yes.
Thank you. Fred Schubert.
Yes.
Sarah Hudson.
Yes.
Roger Bolton.
Yes.
David Zink.
Aye.
Al Blake.
Aye.
And Jim Sullivan.
Aye.
Thank you. It passes. Next item up on the agenda was kind of an open discussion of the community and economic development priorities. Tom, you want to lead us through this one?
Yeah, I think we can kind of truncate some of this. Unless
I was
folks are
hoping
really-
so.
unless folks are really anxious to get into it. What I wanted to make sure that people were aware of was this new community one stop for growth program that the state is embarking on. And I'm saying this because some of the deadlines are coming up relatively quickly. The expressions of interest are due no later than April 2nd. And then the applications are due on May 3rd. This is, I think, an opportunity for communities to take an idea and turn it into a real project, because the agencies are supposed to work with communities on a number of different, along a continuum of growth, as they call it. So there is community capacity building as an element, planning and zoning, site preparation, pre-development and permitting, and then both vertical and horizontal construction. So there are several different programs that communities can tap into wherever they are in that development continuum. So for instance, if you're in the site preparation program or site preparation stage, there are a couple of grant programs that are going to be able to help with that. And if you need initial planning, there's a community planning element. And I think new to this whole effort is there is a rural development program specific for small towns. with a fair amount of money. So what my thought was, and I think we're getting too late in the game tonight, was to really try to go through some of the, some of the development, both economic and community development priorities in communities. And then what are the challenges? How are communities addressing them? And then what are the needs to kind of move projects forward? So I think we can just, if you're not aware of the community One Stop for Growth, you can Google it and it'll come up and you can get some idea about that. And if you have an idea for a community or a development project, you can give me a call or shoot me an email and I might be able to provide more information. Or Laura actually as well.
Well, I was just going to add that if any communities are doing the expression of interest, if you could let us know and maybe even provide a copy of what you're submitting, we have newfound capacity to help move some projects along by potentially helping you find needed matching dollars or identify sources for needed matching dollars. So just keep us in the loop on anything that you're submitting to One Stop. It will help us help you.
Who should we send that to?
Sending it to Tom is fine and he'll get things into the right hands.
Could you put the link to that in the chat?
The link to the community One Stop for Growth.
Yes.
Maybe Laura can do it better than I can.
The chat is disabled, but
okay.
let me look up what the link would be. Just
Just
a
go
moment.
to Mass.
I can look it up.
You'll get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mass.gov One Stop. You're going to find all sorts of things about it, including webinars on how to use it, which are really helpful.
Right, and what Laura was alluding to in terms of technical assistance is that we did just receive a very large award from the Economic Development Administration. This is CARES Act money, not this last round of economic recovery, but the first round.
Really old stuff.
Old stuff that's going to allow Laura, as well as we're hiring another senior economic planner to work with communities on these particular types of things. So I think there's an opportunity to kind of move projects forward. I know there was a discussion about some housing. How do you get a housing project going? Well, maybe that can be a part of it. So I'd encourage you all to kind of utilize this as a resource. And I think unless someone wants to really speak about a particular project, Kyle, I think we can move this along.
Sure, thank you. Does anyone have a specific to discuss? Hearing none, next item up on the agenda is full commission meeting time. We're following up from a request at last meeting to change the meeting time. Tom?
Well, I think we've decided not to. That's a short answer, and I think part of that reason was because we don't really know, what's going to happen in the long term. About
Right.
It's sometimes it's convenient, when we're zooming 100% to have meetings a little bit earlier, but we don't know if that's going to continue.
Right.
And if we start
And,
flip-flopping times around, it might be just hard. And if we kind of if we have to go back to in-person meetings, which I think is an option, that would be a hardship for people if they're going back to work or actually going to work somewhere rather than their own home.
Yeah, commute time for such a for some of the outlying communities would be a lot to move it up. So yeah, keeping it the same I think is in the best interest, at least for now. Executive Director's report. Tom, you want to?
Well, unless there are some questions, I mean, it's a pretty succinct report. If there anybody has
any final questions or comments?
Yeah, this is Al Blake. Quick question. Has there
Yes,
been
sir.
any thought to given to resurrecting Fifth Thursday events?
We just talked about it at the Commission Development Committee meeting, and we all would love to resurrect the Fifth Thursday dinners. I mean, I think we even have a taste of going to Mazio's. We can taste the food. But I think we're going to have to wait until the governor kind of opens up.
Well, we could do one via Zoom.
Well, okay. Well, that's some good feedback. You know, we did one of the things that we did also talk about at Commission Development Committee was that we wanted to try, and actually the senator mentioned it tonight. You know, there has been this effort to deal with culverts. Now, this is not the the sexiest topic, but there was a special commission that did come up with a report about culverts, and in terms of ways of cost saving for communities and different technologies, maybe predetermined designs. We tried to get one of those workshops late last year. MassDOT said that they weren't quite ready for that yet, but that would be one that we could kind of move forward. If anyone has any ideas for a workshop, you know, one of the things.
The previous topic you just mentioned seemed like it could be one. Community and economic development with some examples.
Okay, well, we can try something like that. You know, one of the benefits of Zoom meetings is it's relatively easy actually to kind of prepare something. If anybody's got any ideas, shoot them my way. You know, we can pursue that.
Thank you. Any final questions or comments? Well, I'll take, first of all, I want to thank everybody. We had a small crowd tonight, but we had some nice, robust discussion, and I always like that. Thank you, everyone, for participating. It was an action-packed meeting tonight. Thank you, everyone. Anybody want to make a final motion?
Make a motion to adjourn. I'll second.
All right. Fred Schubert in with the motion. David Zinkin with the second. Without objection, I'm not going to run the roll call for this one. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, folks.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.